in surgery, my heart stopped 8 times. And boy, I was sure trying to die, but I kept fighting it. And they finally reached in. You know, I was down about 15 minutes the last time. And they were going to give up, and a doctor said, there's too many armed police officers at the hospital. You know, we can't quit on her. So they took me upstairs, cracked me open. And they broke every rib I had from compressions. They did compressions so much. They cracked my chest. He went into my chest about this deep, brought my heart out, manually massaged it, got it going.
January 6, 2015 is a day that I'll never forget. I felt the most intense pain that I've ever felt in my life.
He walked in my office, he tried to jam the lock, and he said, "I'm sorry, but I'm here to kill you today."
Shot me right in the face right here.
For 8 days, they kept me in a dungeon downstairs.
My heart stopped 8 times.
And he turns around and grabs my head and he slits my throat.
Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of Thin Blue Blood. Today we're going to be talking to Lisa Ramsey and talking about her story of survival and the harrowing things that she went through back in 2003. Lisa, thank you for coming. Thank you for being willing. Tell us a little bit about you and where you're at now. And
Okay. I'm a 31-year law enforcement veteran. I started out my career working for organized crime task force, mainly drug enforcement. My main job for 7 years was undercover narcotics. And I guess I have made purchases of illicit narcotics in 29 counties within the state of Texas.
wow, that's impressive. You know, you started out your career where most officers don't, probably in one of the most dangerous areas as far as being undercover, because if something happens, you know, things can go south probably a lot faster than average because of the type of people that you are dealing with. What was your first initial feeling on when you started your career undercover?
Well, first off, I've had a number of close calls. Before this injury, I had a number of close calls. I grew up idolizing Angie Dickinson,
Right.
policewoman. And she worked what was called back then Vice. And Vice was the coolest job. It covered robberies, sex crimes, narcotics, you know, everything. Well, by the time I became an officer, they had specialized each section of crime. You had robbery units, you had sex crime units, you had narcotic units. And so I looked at what could I investigate, what could I go into that would cover the most crimes? Well, with narcotics, you have robberies, you have burglaries, you had sex trafficking, you had sex crimes, you just got a dose of everything. And I thought, that's where I want to be. I want to touch every bit of crime out there. I want to know it all. So that's why I went into narcotics. And then after 7 years of working with the Organized Crime Task Force, you know, I'd been undercover for 7 years, and sometimes you work in several cases at one time. That's several identities, several different locations. It can get really confusing. Not just the job itself, the investigation itself, but psychologically. You start to lose who you are. So when I saw I was kind of drowning in it, I chose to move to a big department with stability, upward mobility, and just be a regular police officer. So I went to Fort Worth and I joined that department. Then as soon as I got out of the academy, because of all my prior experience, they pulled me onto a federal task force, and I worked a wiretap for several months. And that was before I even finished field training. And then after that, I went back to finish field training, and I had maybe 4 months of patrol. And they said, because of your experience, we want you in the gang unit. I went to the gang unit. Then because of my narcotics experience, after a year and a half, they shipped me over to narcotics. And that's been my career.
So it didn't take the path of a typical rookie officer or anything, you know,
No.
because you know what it's like to go through the academy, have to go through your field training.
Yeah.
And, you know, generally most departments, 16 weeks, you know, so
Right.
you go through that. But instead, because of what you had already learned, so
Yeah.
everything that you had already learned really benefited you for the larger department, and it benefited them.
It did.
So, you know, obviously we see that you're in a wheelchair. And tell me about the day that all that occurred.
Okay. It was January 2nd, 2003, which I always find humor in because, like I told you before, the date is 1, 2, 3. So it makes it easy for paperwork, which I appreciate.
Right.
Yeah. My birthday, 6/26/62. Hey, I got great numbers, you know. But anyways, on that particular day, I was assigned to what we called SAU, Special Approach Unit. You know, I've worked on various teams. This particular team, we worked street level narcotics. In Fort Worth, you have low income areas such as, we've got neighborhoods that you probably haven't heard of, but like we've got a couple of neighborhoods, Stop Six, Como. They're little kind of walled off communities, very low income, predominantly black occupants. And in areas like that, within an urban area, it's so crowded and everything, these young little thugs just stand on street corners and they do what we call just slinging dope. They do it in the open because the neighbors within the neighborhood, the older people, are scared of these little thugs. They're usually gang members. So we were in and out of that same neighborhood probably 4 days a week. And we were an undercover team, and what we'd usually do is whoever day it was to be the undercover officer, mine had been earlier that morning. I'd made a buy up on the north side of Fort Worth in a Hispanic area. So now it was one of my buddies' turns to make a buy. And there were 4 of us out there. 3 were gonna be on the arrest team and 1 was gonna work undercover. As I'm driving through the neighborhood, I get flagged down by a young man. But I've got all of my equipment laying on my seat. My police jacket that says police, you know, my vest, my hood, you know, everything laying there. And you can't put it on because I can see through the windshield. You're working undercover, so you can't just hood up and, you know what I mean by hood up, and, you know, put on your police markings and stuff. So I'm rolling through the neighborhood and I signal my partner that's supposed to do the buy, and I tell him, hey, there's a guy right here. He is flagging me down if you want to roll through and get him. So as he's rolling through to get him, I try to get a block or 2 off, and I'm trying to hood up and get my equipment on when he hollers, bingo, bingo. Well, that's a signal that he's made a purchase, and we other 3 officers need to swoop in and make the arrest. Well, as we're swooping in, I'm trying to dress, and I get the hood on. I can't get my vest. It slipped off the seat, but I get my little jacket, and I'm putting it on. I jump out. The guys run into a little mom and pop store. So we jump out, we approach the door, and I grab the door with my left arm, and I jerk it open. There's a female officer right here and a male officer on the other side of the door, and no one moves, so I go to take a step around the door, and when I do, a shot rings out, and it catches me right here. So had I been wearing a vest, it wouldn't have stopped it. It was right under the armpit. at the time when it went in, it felt like 1,000 bee stings at once, just really, really hot. Can you relate to that?
I absolutely can.
Okay. It was like just 1,000 bee stings. And it traveled down to my waist. And when it got to my waist, I went numb. And I knew immediately I was paralyzed. I no longer had the use of my legs. What I didn't know, that the bullet went through my lung. And this is your big lung. You have 2 lobes. Your heart's here. So this is the strong lung. Well, because it ripped through that lower lobe, this lung couldn't keep up with all of that. So it collapsed both lungs. It clipped the arterial artery and then went to the spine and blew out about a 2-inch chunk. Now, I immediately started bleeding out, but I was a gym rat. I worked out constantly because I'd been in a couple of close calls. I'd been next to a couple of people that had been shot in West Texas, and my goal was to never die on the street. I could die at a hospital, but not on the street.
Right.
You know, you're not going to get me on your turf. So I was a workout nut. When that bullet entered me, they couldn't find the wound because I was so muscled, it closed up. But I'm just, blood's coming out of everywhere, you know? And these people are hollering at me and talking to me, and, you know, and I can't talk because both my lungs are collapsed. And when the ambulance finally gets there, they're giving me oxygen. Well, it's burning like fire, it hurts. And I start throwing punches, you know. It's fight or die. And the only thing I can think of is, why are these people talking to me when, you know, I have tunnel vision? All I'm trying to do is breathe air in and out of me, and it's so painful. And I know if I close my eyes or if I quit breathing, I'm dead. And I'm like, leave me, you know, I just want to scream, leave me alone and let me focus, but I can't. I can't quit breathing to try to talk, and I can't talk because these lungs are collapsed. And, you know, my daughter was 4 years old. Somebody said something about my daughter. They said her name. The thing I loved the most about my daughter was her silk spun hair. It was beautiful. And it was at that moment I saw her kneeling beside me in a vision. And I could just kind of reach up and play in her hair like I did every night at home. You know, when we laid in bed, I'd just play in her hair. And that kind of kept me calm. Well, between the scene and surgery, my heart stopped 8 times. And boy, I was sure trying to die, but I kept fighting it. And they finally reached in. You know, I was down about 15 minutes that last time, and they were going to give up. And a doctor said, there's too many armed police officers at the hospital. You know, we can't quit on her. So they took me upstairs, cracked me open. And they broke every rib I have from compressions. They did compressions so much. They cracked my chest. He went into my chest about this deep, brought my heart out, manually massaged it, got it going.
Wow.
I think it was at this point. Are you a faithful man?
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, this could turn a lot of people off, but I'll share it with you. When I went down that last time, I believe that's when this happened. I felt like there were a lot of people standing around, had kind of like an outer body experience.
Right.
And I felt like I kind of raised up in a hospital bed, you know, just kind of slouched back. And I saw this real bright light off in the distance, and it would get closer and closer. It was a beautiful white glow. All I know is it made me feel really warm and loved. And I kept looking at this light, and then I would get to where I was kind of standing up straight. Closer this vision got, I thought, hey, that's somebody in there. Vision got closer and closer, and I could kind of see a robe, a white flowing robe. I could kind of see some brown hair or something. It got closer and closer. I swear to you, I promise you, with all that I am, was Jesus Christ. It was the picture that I grew up with in those little Southern Baptist churches.
Right.
You could not see his facial features, but you knew it was him, and it was a figure that, like John Wayne, you know,
Right.
just bigger than life. And it was so warm and loving. And there wasn't a verbal conversation. It was all here. It was like, wow, I'm really glad to see you. And, you know, he was like, you feeling okay? And I'm like, no, I really hurt, you know. And, you know, I said, I'm so tired. I'm just so tired. I hurt so bad. And he was like, well, come on with me. Okay, you bet. I'm following him. I get a little closer, and it's like a cartoon. You dig your heels in, and he turns around and like, what's wrong? I said, what about my daughter? He said, she doesn't have another parent. I'm it. He just kind of smiled. He said, maybe you should stay.
So you had a choice.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
And when I woke up, I was so happy. When I woke up, I just said, wow, I'm so glad to be here. I was out about 4 days. My daughter, they couldn't get me woke up. My daughter, they brought her into my room, they untied my arm, let her hold my hand, and she was singing, Jesus Loves Me. I woke up, and I visited with her, and as soon as she walked out the door, then I yanked the tube out of my throat. So, yeah. I don't think I've ever cried telling that.
That's very powerful. Very powerful.
It's the love of my mother.
It is. And, you know, I'm like you. I believe that at certain times when catastrophic events happen like that, I believe with you that Jesus is very much there. I know he's very much real. I do believe that at times he gives us a choice, because when we have a family to take care of, God knows that.
Yeah.
He does.
You know,
And he's
God
very-
God can't do everything on his own, and that's what people don't understand. He can set up the situation, but you've got to decide, you know. He can't do everything for you.
No, he sure can't.
But, you know, I was a believer before, but now it's...
So it's pretty fair to say that your faith is the one thing that really got you through everything. Because I'm sure it had to be such an adjustment to get used to being paralyzed.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what you had to go through as far as that goes. You know, of course, back in 2003, the medical technology isn't the same as it is now.
No.
And back then, you just had to accept what was going to happen. How did your friends, your family, your faith get you through that part right there? Because it had to be so life altering to all of a sudden just wake up paralyzed one day?
Yeah, it was, but to be honest, the injury is not that big a deal to live with. It's everything that comes with it. You know, my family and friends were real upset. I lost a lot of friends. Couldn't handle seeing me like this. You know, I knew that I was everybody's shoulder to lean on. But boy, it sure stunk to kind of have that hit me in the face afterwards, because, you know, I was no longer a convenient friend. You know,
Exactly.
Before I'd done everything for him. No. So I lost a lot of friends, and it hurt, you know. But I've gained a lot of good friends, a lot. And the only opportunities that were available to me back then were through the PVA, the Paralyzed Veterans of America. They embraced me, but the only chapter around here is in Dallas. And people from Fort Worth don't drive to Dallas, you know. And I had a 4-year-old. I've always been a single parent. I needed, my child needed a routine. She needed to have me near her at home. So I couldn't take advantage of any of those opportunities. And I needed to make a living because she was 4. And I had a long time to support her. You know, I needed to make a living, I needed to continue working, and so I couldn't really do for me. You know, there were a lot of medical procedures I really couldn't afford to try, because I couldn't afford for anything to get worse, because I needed to be here to raise that child.
Right.
And so after she graduated high school, then there were organizations like the one you're involved with, EOPG.
Yes, ma'am.
And, you know, that they're so good about taking people like me on retreats and just opportunities to get together with other people like me. And, you know, I kind of found my tribe by doing that, people that I can really relate to. And so it's been the last couple of years, you know, being an empty nester has almost been a blessing for me personally, because now I'm able to live, you know. But the not being able to work, it's just not a big deal. It's fighting pharmacies over prescriptions, workers' comp over doctor's appointments. You know, they made me go to one doctor for shoulder surgery, and he severed my bicep.
Wow.
And they never even told me. They never even told me. They sent me to another surgeon. Boy, they sure didn't vet him, because I found out afterwards he'd been in trouble in 4 other states. He was supposed to do what's called a urinary diversion. My bladder was very, very tiny. And I had told people my whole life, I have a peanut bladder. You know, I couldn't drink very much water without having to stop. And so they were going to build me almost like a second tank, like they used to have on pickups, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Auxiliary fuel tank.
Yeah,
There you go.
exactly. So when he said that, I said, oh yeah, just like old pickup, you know. And well, guess what? He messed up. He screwed up the surgery. Didn't bother to tell me. Instead, what he did was he fired me as a patient and blamed it on my caseworker to cover it up. Well, because he messed up my surgery, I ended up losing my left kidney. So now I have one kidney, half a left lung, and some other things real messed up. And no, I can't walk or feel anything from here down.
Right.
So you see what I mean? The not walking, the being paralyzed is not that big of an issue. It's everything else that comes with it.
Right. Question though, would you change anything?
Oh, the job?
Would you change anything about what you had gone through injury-wise from where you started in 2003 to today?
No, because I'm very comfortable. I'm very proud and comfortable of the person that I am. You know, I hope others, you know, appreciate me, but if they don't, I like me, you know. I like me, I'm very comfortable. I just think that I'm just at a really good place in life, you know. I'm 55, I'm nearing retirement. I wish I hadn't had to fight so hard to keep my job. You know, I had to go before city council 12 years in a row and beg for my job. And, you know, I hated that. That caused a lot of stress. You know, but since they voted to let me stay until I'm ready to retire, I can't tell you how stress-free I've been and how happy I've been.
You know, the fighting that you had to do probably paved the way for many others like you, many others with other disabilities, to be able to stay in their jobs, especially in police jobs, because the way you understand how police departments work.
Yes.
They need you as functional as you can possibly get. And if you don't fit what they need done, you can be replaced easily.
Yeah.
However, I believe with you, that changed. And I think it changed in a big way for a lot of departments around the nation because of what you fought for. If you had to say any one thing to our viewers out there in Facebook, to any of our police officers or anything like that, that maybe even going through what you're dealing with, you know, we've got guys like Ronnie Cortez and Houston PD that's, you know, newly paralyzed and trying to figure out life, and people like that, what words of advice would you say to them?
Never give up the fight. Never. And if you need somebody to hold your hand, call me, because I'll be there.
Guys, we shared a very important story, something that could have ended her career, but she chose to fight. And we've got other officers around the country right now that are going through the same fight. And if you know any of those officers right now, please like and share this video. This might just give them the opportunity to fight and give them the hope that they need to go through. Lisa, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. And above all, thank you for your sacrifice and your faith.
I love you, Houston.
Love you too, Lisa.